Welcome to the Artist Notepad, where we explore artistry, we talk life, and we talk a whole load of shockingly interesting dialogue. I'm David.
And I'm Jack. Wait, you're
I'm Jack.
David. I'm David. Thank you for...
I'm Jack.
Shut up. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Tan Artistry with Wartabar, a talented Sydney-based artist, performer, and all-round entertainer. But first, Jack, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah,
how
man, not bad. You know, we're just doing this. We're doing this thing. You know, we're getting through this isolation time, and things are slowly returning back to normal.
Indeed,
which is nice.
Indeed.
You know.
Yep.
Yeah, just chugging along. How about yourself? How you going?
Oh, dang. I was like waiting for you to do it, and this was the thing that I was going to point out. I'm doing pretty well, thank you. The funny thing or the interesting thing that I noticed from previous episodes was like the nickname I was going to give you is Weatherman, because every time I ask you, how you doing?
Do I talk about the weather?
You always start with, yeah, not bad, man. The weather's been pretty good these days. A bit of sunshine. Bit cloudy,
it's about 30% chance.
30, 40.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, look, man.
I was like waiting for it, and you didn't do it.
Oh, yeah. Sorry to disappoint. But for me, the weather has a big impact on my mood, man. And I've definitely noticed this recently during isolation time. When it's sunnier, it's just so much easier for me to just be productive and
believe you.
In general just feel better. Anyway, how are you? I thought you were about to say that I don't ask how you're going, and I was just like, oh, geez, have I not asked how he's going on the last few episodes?
No, you've been asking that. Don't worry about that one. Yeah, you've been doing quite well on that side. I'm doing good, man. The week kind of just flew by once again. I can't believe we're already like mid-year. Like that trips me out.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, but. Yeah, it's been good, man. Have been going over to a lot of friends' houses again, enjoying good company, good food. So yeah, man, I definitely agree. Like things seem to be going back to normal. So yeah, quite happy.
Yeah, let's hope it's the right time for things to go back to normal. You know?
Yeah, man.
Well, not normal, but I guess more normal.
More normal. Yeah.
Yeah.
But without any further ado. Unless you have something else to say, Jack. Do you have more to say?
No, man, that's all from me.
Okay. Without any further ado, I would love to introduce our next guest. He's a multi-instrumentalist. He's a singer. He's a dancer. He is a producer. And he's an all-round fun and cool guy. Please welcome Wartabar.
Woo! Welcome to the show.
Hey, man.
Thanks for having me.
So Wartabar, how you going?
Yeah, man, I'm good. I mean, considering all things with isolation,
yeah,
you know,
for sure.
Things are slowly picking up, and I'm doing really good.
Awesome.
How are you guys?
Yeah, we're good. So we brought you on because you've just released a single, and it's a great little track. Not little track, Jack. What are you talking about?
Indeed.
It's a great, huge track.
It's a huge, big banger. That's what it is.
It's a banger. It's bringing the houses down. It's a feel-good track. You guys go check it out right now. It's called This Love. It's available on all streaming platforms. Am I right with that?
Yeah, so it's available on iTunes and Spotify, Tidal, and a whole bunch of other platforms as well.
Ooh, awesome. Well, we're going to be talking about the single today. But first, before we crack onto that, let's wind it back. Let's wind the clock back to the origin story. How did music come about for you? How did music come into your life? And when was the point where sort of it started becoming more of a serious thing for you? When did you start making music as a profession?
For sure. That's a good question, Jack, actually. So I'm originally from Papua New Guinea. So growing up, being a Melanesian and like kind of like the Polynesians, like us Melanesians, we grew up with like choirs, going to church and all that stuff. And in my family, we're just surrounded by a lot of music from home. And it's something that's always been around me. And I believe it's something that from my exposure to music, I've always, from that point on, I've just always been constantly embedded into me, into my into my brain and into my soul and whatnot. But in terms of making music a profession, I feel like it was something I actually wanted to do from the very beginning. I started singing when I was around 8 years old. I started experimenting with different things when I was when I was 10. I wrote my first song. It didn't actually didn't rhyme at all, but that wasn't like the point. I was just like, I still remember the name of it. Actually, it's called the song was
Well, we've actually got it right here. So, David, do you want to play the nudge?
I'm glad you asked, Jack. I'm glad you asked. No.
The song was called I Wouldn't Live Without You. And I don't even remember anything, like not even the lyrics. I only remember that one line. And that's all I remember, basically. And I think from that point on, from 8 years old and 10, like I just kind of invested in that and just realized, it was something fun that I loved doing. And then the more I grew in that passion, the more I realized, hey, like this is something I actually really want to pursue professionally. And I just grew through that process. Started writing songs when I was 10, of course, but I started just going on this journey within my teen years and high school and on throughout to uni. And now I'm just really excited to be releasing music. This is my first single, and it's just it's the first of many.
Well, congratulations, man! It's a great way to enter into the scene. How have you found the reception to it so far?
So far, there's been a lot of positive reception, which is cool. I'm actually, to be honest, I'm really keen to find some haters. I don't know. It's really funny because like people don't look forward to that. But the reason why I'm looking forward to it is because I'm just like, yes, this means I'm legit doing something. I got haters.
Right.
That's a cool way of looking at it, man. It's a really, really positive twist on it.
That's awesome, man. Oh, I have a question just to backtrack just a little bit, right? You say you wrote your first song when you were like around 10 years old. Like what instrument did you use to kind of come with the song or like create the song? Because I did a little bit of research, and I found out that is it true you play more than 10 instruments? Is that true facts? We want to know the truth today. So can you lay it down on us?
Exclusive.
Exclusive.
Yeah. Well, yeah, actually. So I've actually made a list of the instruments I want to learn. And the thing is, I don't really talk about this often, mainly because like, I don't want to like I don't really like to toot my own horn.
Sure.
Like I do play more than 10 instruments actually. At the moment I have a list of like 31 instruments that I like have a list of like the instruments I want to learn to play, or I have learned to play, at least even like the basics at least to begin with. And so like so far, like, if I was to name 10 instruments, like vocals being one of them, guitar, bass, drums, piano, congas. These are more Cuban instruments, timbales, bongos. What else is there? I'm up to 8. There's like 2 more left.
Is that 8? Okay, cool.
That's 8. That's 8. I'm just trying to think.
You're well and truly established as a multi-instrumentalist there.
Yeah. Oh, there's 2 other instruments. I'm not thinking straight at the moment. I wrote it down, but there's a whole bunch of them actually, and also including some other instruments. I think some Brazilian instruments I've been learning when I was at uni, which is cool. And I recently got some instruments from PNG actually when I went back home, and we brought them back, and I started learning them as well, which is cool. So I'm always just trying to creatively stretch myself. It's not so much it's not so much like, I like the challenge of learning new things. And for me, it's not so much trying to like be better than other people or trying to compete with other people. Because I I tend to follow this saying every now and again. I remind myself where I think applying it to within this creative context, I believe that comparison is the enemy of contentment. So if I am content with my progress and like with where I am at for myself, if I don't need to compare myself to other people, if I only compare myself with the person I look at in the mirror each day, then really I'm just really trying to improve myself each and every time, and that's kind of how I that's really how I I try to look at it.
Man, that's a really positive message that I think a lot of artists could get something from. And I guess speaking about positive messages, let's start getting into the single, because the single's just come out. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the thought process behind the single, what the single is about, what it means to you?
Definitely. Really, so this Love is pretty much like a typical love song. Like, I love doing pop music. That's the field I'm entering into. Or I would say I just entered into starting yesterday.
Right.
But with the song, like the way I like to write songs, even collaborating with other people, I like to write them in a very descriptive manner or poetic way. So even if I write a simple love song, I want to be as creative as possible, like visually or lyrically or melodically. My thought process with this song was really just, I wanted to really sort of tell a story about basically tell a love story about the ebb and flow of, between myself and this woman that I really like. Not based on a true story by any chance, but
is that true? Like, is it actually not a true story, or are you just trying to say that so we don't look deeper into it? Because we'll find out. We'll find out.
We have the resources.
You'll probably find out.
We've got interns doing their research right now. So
you'll probably find out. You'll probably find out in Tan Deep, getting philosophical.
Yeah. Ooh.
I really just wrote it, to be honest. I also like to try and write based off other people's experiences and picture it like it's my own. And I think that's how I approach the song. With the song, it's going back to what I was saying. It's really about the ebb and flow between the relationship of this guy and this girl, of that ebb and flow of attraction and relationship between them, which I think pretty much sums up love songs in general. But I did my best to try and address it within the song. What was that other question you asked me? Sorry, completely forgot.
I was just going to ask, what does it mean to you personally? Which is actually become more of an interesting question now that you said that it's from the perspective of someone else. So how do you relate to that song personally if it's written in the perspective of someone else? It's a hard one. Sorry.
No, that's cool. I guess so the thing with me is, if I write someone else, I would try to empathize and put myself in their shoes. So if I relate to this, for me, it's really mostly about, so the first lyrics, the first verse, one of the lyrics is take me to the wild, babe. My deliverance, I put it in your hands. And I think that's very interesting, because when I wrote this, because I co-wrote this with another producer and songwriter as well, he's really good at what he does. And basically, the way it relates to me personally, I would say, is that I think there's a wildness to love. There's a wildness and a kind of almost an untamed passion.
Like a primal sort of.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, like, this song obviously wasn't like primal in terms of, it's like, it's just about sex, but like, I think
sure.
even with love itself, like, there's like a drive, there's like a certain urge or a primal drive, because of that. I'm just trying to articulate myself as best I can, and I feel like with this song, I wanted to be descriptive, in certain ways where it could be like, even lyrically as well, like melodically, of course, but lyrically, I wanted it to be descriptive in a way where it's like people can really capture the feeling and the emotion, the evoked emotion of what this particular guy is feeling for this girl.
Right.
And it's funny because it is a simple concept in terms of the love song, but the thing is, like, and especially nowadays with pop, there's a lot of great production, a lot of great music, like in that regard. But I find sometimes lyrically it can be very basic in terms of like sometimes I wanted to approach the song in a way where it's like, I want to serenade this woman, like melodically, harmonically, lyrically. Cool, and I think that's, I strongly believe that's why it's going to be, why it's going to engage a lot of my audience.
It's interesting because you sort of opened a can of worms there, which, like, we could do a whole another episode on this, but just about pop in general and how obviously pop is very manufactured. It's nothing new. I know some people talk like it is, but it really, ever since popular music became, a thing, as certain genres of music became mainstream, they began to become more manufactured, and more writers got on it, to the point where these days, a pop song has like, sometimes like 15 different writers all on it. And so I think sometimes what that does is there's so many creative voices that it sort of creates this blandness and this similarity between everything else that's let's take the radio, let's take a mainstream radio station. A lot of what you hear on there has similar things happening, even if they don't sound exactly the same. Like as you're talking about the lyrical content, it tends to have patterns, and it tends to have the themes are pretty similar in a lot of the songs. And so it's interesting there because, like, even though you are coming at it looking to create a pop song, you're coming at it as an independent writer, or there was one other writer on there, but your perspective is still quite niche and still quite individual. And so I think that maybe that would help you in the way that you've managed to get your lyrics across in this song. Because I it's funny when you were describing what you were trying to create, I was like, yep, yeah, I can hear that that's exactly how I interpret it. So that's great. I don't really know where I'm going with that. I'm just saying good job, basically.
Yeah.
Just clapping. He's just clapping for you.
Yeah. No, cheers.
All right, well, no, that's great. So that's sort of the meaning behind the single. So how did it come about? Is this song something that maybe the track was written first and then you started to write the lyrics around? Did you have the lyrics already? What was sort of the process of how this song got put together?
Yeah, that's a good question too. Well, when I wrote this with the other producer and songwriter, I'm not gonna lie. He basically, because I wanted to learn from him about how he wrote pop songs, so he's kind of workshopping it, and he basically wrote the first verse, the pre-chorus, and the chorus, and it was just amazing to me because I've been writing songs like since I was 10, and I've got my own way of writing, of course. But the thing that was amazing for me was that, like, I was really, it's funny because at first it was like kind of like a bit of a creative spike for me in a negative sense at the time, because obviously he was really good at what he does, but I found that because I haven't collaborated with a lot of other writers even at that point, I had to force myself to be open-minded to how other people create.
Sure.
And it's funny because I kind of had this internal nudge within me, or it wasn't even a nudge. It was kind of like he was saying, "Oh, we do it like this, do it like this, do it like that." And in my mind, like everything within me was like, "What if I do it my way? What?"
Sure.
Yeah. But I just kind of like, I was just like, calm down, let him do his thing, just try and observe and learn, which is what I did. And I was just like, I kind of wanted to calm that inner critic of mine. I think because I got so used to creating by myself for such a long time, that defined my creative world in a sense.
Right.
And when he actually did that, I was just like, because it didn't even take us long. Like it just took him like, how it takes like Sia to write it took her like 30 minutes to write like Chandelier or something. It took him the same amount of time, but it was impressive for me because it's like, it just showed me that becomes a result of the effort that you put in. And it becomes, you just do things with ease. After you get just certain points.
Finely tune your craft.
Yeah. And we just went on YouTube. We were just like, oh, you know what? Like, let's find a mad beat. And we found like
a good place to start. That's like the inspiration. Yeah.
For sure. And we found this like Bruno Mars type beat, which is really funny because now that it's come out, people are just messaging me and being like, oh, this reminds me of like Bruno Mars or like Bruno Mars / MJ. If they had a baby. Like, Michael Mars, Bruno.
You're
Jackson.
Michael Mars. You are Michael Mars. Bruno
Jackson.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, like it's funny. I mean, but yeah. So we basically went on YouTube. We did that. We wrote to it, and then we just recorded just like the first verse through all the way through the chorus, and that's all we really got. And then I just really took that and developed it from there. And and then now we have the song.
So you like wrote a new song around what you recorded?
Yes, that's basically what we did. So like the same chord progression, but we wanted to make it. I did it with Tawanda actually. It's good.
Shout out to
Tawanda.
Shout out to T. But yeah, man, like it was great. Even working with T was fun. Like, and that's where I really wanted to like You mentioned David. You mentioned doing stuff with producing. That's something I'm really interested in at the moment as well, like being hands-on. So with T, I would say I co-produced it. Like obviously, I give him all the majority of the credit. But in terms of producing, it's funny because when I see artists, whether like you're a vocalist or in a band or whatever, I tend to see. I remember being at uni and they were saying being a producer is like, it's a broad definition, but part of it is obviously overseeing the vision or steering the vision of where the song is going. And I tend to see myself as an artist, and I see all artists this way. I believe artists are producers to a certain extent because we have a creative vision for what we want to execute. Funnily enough, like working with this guy to help me write the song was really good. And he was really experienced, which is great. But I've also come across other people who are really experienced, like as producers and whatnot. It's funny, they would get stuck in a certain pattern so much so that it's kind of like, this is definitively the way it should be. But that's because it's based off their own experience and their own approach of doing things. Whereas I've realized that creatively speaking, whether it's in producing or songwriting or being an artist, being a vocalist, whatever it is, I find that creativity is always ever evolving. It's always pushing boundaries, like for yourself, or it's always risk taking. There's always a level of risk to it. And I think that's part of the excitement because when you want to create, it's like, how can you do things differently, even if it's just like little things, you know what I mean? And that's kind of how that's why I really liked approaching this with the songwriter and producer that I was with before, because even though he was in his certain patterns, I was open to that. And I'm all for creative collaborations, like in that sense. But I think as I continue to grow and develop, like I tend to have this attitude where even if someone has a great reputation within the industry, etc., I always want to observe and see how they respond in the creative sense in that way, because I feel like if things are always done in a certain way, I believe truly being creative is always trying to push your own boundaries. And when you creatively collaborate, it's good because you have your own unique perspective of how you do things, and other people have their perspectives, and you can kind of figure out how you can, innovate together in that way.
Yeah. You learn and you might add to your own arsenal, or like they might see how you work, and then it might change the way you work, or it help you maybe develop as someone who is a creative.
It's interesting that you brought up Tawanda, because we actually had a similar conversation with him. David and I asked him if he had some kind of go-to process when it came to putting a track together, and he actually said that he has a big emphasis on not actually sticking to a process, being able to be flexible so that he can just move with the artist. So if the artist comes in and they're just like, okay, I've got something, I just want you to like, add some chords to this, he can go, great, I'll do that. But if the artist comes in and they're just like, I don't know, I want to make a song, I don't really know what I want to write about, I don't know anything, just can you come up with something and then I'll try and work with it. And he's able to do that too, and sort of be able to just, move with the artist. And in a way, I mean, that's the sort of the old school producer, is the sort of the musical director of the past, where they would sort of just guide the track in the direction it needed to go in, but they wouldn't necessarily be taking command. It would just sort of be like, helping with communication between the artist and everyone else, as well as just guiding the track and the creative vision. And so that's interesting that you brought him up, because you two seem to share a pretty similar philosophy when it comes to being flexible when it comes to collaboration.
T's someone who, like, as you were saying, Jack, someone who kind of bases his creative processes off like the vibe. And I remember like comparing him, like how you just described him, right? It's like comparing him to like Rick Rubin, and that's what we kind of was talking about that time. It's like, he's all about the vibe. It's about, both getting into the same headspace, or like having that connection with the person that you're trying to make something with, and then hopefully the baby comes out right and you get some Bruno Jackson magic,
It's funny that you mentioned that, David, because when you said like getting in the right headspace and working with people, because one of the things I learned from uni, from my teacher, like he would always say this in a performance sense, but I apply this to all of the creative process in all other avenues of creativity through music. Like, always leave your ego at the door. Like, it's always about the music first. Like, the moment it becomes about you, then you're taking the attention away from the music. When it becomes more about what you do, like your vision, your process, and serving the song, serving the music, serving the production, serving the performance, people will respect you more. And it's not so much to say that I'm trying to do this because like, oh, I want you to respect me type of thing. Sure. It's almost a lesson of and a reminder of humility in that sense. Being humble, I find, is an important character trait, but also musically, because I've realized that like there's always so much more to learn. Like, the more that we learn, the more we realize we don't know. So realistically, it's like there's this whole plethora of knowledge within the collective experience of humanity. And for me to be arrogant means that I am only arrogant because of what I know. But there's just so much out there that, being humble is an important thing. And also, not just for the sake of doing music. I think, like, when you work with other people, I think it's a valuable trait as well, because I find that when I network with people and whatnot, like, it just goes a long way. And also, like, it's a bit of a rarity. Like, I know people say that singers are divas, and that is the case. I've come across some people like, oh, like they're diva for whatever. But I find, as long as I continue to remain humble, there's always much more to learn. I can always learn a lot from, trying things in different creative processes, and I can always learn from other people who know more than me and know things in other fields that I have no idea about as well.
Right, but are you trying to say, like, just so I can wrap my head around it, are you trying to say you try to separate what your ambition or like what your vision is for a particular song or performance, and you just try to create something that's just in itself a creative piece, or it's like you just want to create music but separate what you want from it? Is that what you're trying to say?
It's not about making you look good. It's about making a good piece of art. Is that what you're trying to say?
Right. Yeah. Okay. It's kind of like if, like, I don't want, it's almost like the art and the craft is pretty much the embodiment of what I want people to,
it's
to
about
see,
the art,
to hear, to feel.
Yeah,
sure.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
cool.
That's an awesome approach, man. And I tell you what, something that will do for you is it will keep you genuine. It will keep your music genuine. And like, you want to talk about pop. There's a whole lot of people in pop who are just they're just not genuine at all. Like it's all about riding the trends, all about whatever's popping right now, if you pardon the pun, like they'll do just to get streams, to get fans, to get clicks. And if you're staying with a sense of integrity to your art representing you as a person, then I feel like you're never going to go too far off the track.
Definitely. And it's good that you mentioned that, because like it almost seems very paradoxical in a way that pop music, like you said before, is manufactured, but I want to remain authentic. And
it's good. It's fresh,
which is good. It's fresh, and it's funny because I think pop has a lot of negative connotations to it, especially today. For me, I find the production side of things, like, it's always developing. It's great. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I think from the artistic perspective, I think it's so easy for anyone to do pop, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But I think for somebody to do it well with skill and musicianship and, with who really think things through, that's the type of person like I am and how I want to approach it. And how I define pop in my head is that it's about two things. It's about simplicity and it's about familiarity. But I also like to have variation and try to put my spin on things as well. And hearing different responses and comments from people about the song is like, oh, it's like, it's very interesting. Like it's simple in what it is. Like, it's got a catchy chorus, a catchy hook, but at the same time, it's also quite intricate for what it is. And a reference I would use, because I actually admire as a pop musician, I like, is Bruno Mars, because I love what he does, because he's really, I wouldn't say bring back the musicianship into pop music, but he's really just it's almost like he's reigniting that. You would, yeah?
Yeah, I do think he does. I mean, you listen to his stuff. No one else has music like that's played on the radio. No one else has music which is as intricate from an instrumental level as he does. And I don't think that would be an extreme claim to make, to be honest.
Oh, okay, you know what? You've convinced me. I changed my mind. Yeah, man. I love what he does. I think it's fantastic, and it's just amazing to me because the level that he's at, as well. It's funny. He's amongst this. It's really interesting because it's there's a couple of other artists. I just haven't really listened to them. I've taken the time to listen to them, but Lady Gaga is another one. She's really creative as well, I hear. She came from a classical background, which I think was really cool. And then she does what she does now. And there's a whole bunch of others, but I think those are the type of people I admire because, in a sea of pop artists, where everyone is trying to be a carbon copy, like finding your own authentic creative voice. And making yourself stand out is important. And I had this, if you know what you want to do, who you are, and you will attract the right type of people to you.
That makes it easy then, man. Because if you got fans who like you because you're you, then you don't have to like keep trying to chase a particular sound or anything. You can just keep doing what you do. And they'll keep loving it because you do you.
You boo boo. You do you. That's cool, man. That's interesting because like it's interesting that you have this thought process and this like real seriousness when it comes to artistry and like trying to be authentic. But it's such an interesting choice that you chose pop music out of other genres. Like I'm curious if like there was any other genre that you could have like tapped into, but you decided to go to pop, or was it always just pop and like forever pop?
That's funny actually. It's kind of a mix really. It was acoustic music, island reggae. So my sort of island reggae, I guess, like just in general, and country music, which true story.
Really? Oh,
yeah, it's just like woo-ha! It's a whole.
That's why you were talking about horses. That's why you were talking about horses before we
started the podcast.
Horses in the back.
Horses in the back.
Like country music actually inspired me to write songs. Actually, believe it or not, like I'm not too much a fan of like a lot of the yodeling and all that kind of stuff. but,
hey, we don't judge, bro. If you do that, you do you. All right, like
it's about authenticity, right?
If you want to yodel, then you go ahead and yodel.
Yodel your socks off, all right?
I might not use it maybe at this point. Who knows? I might wake up one day and be like, I'm gonna get Keith Urban to yodel on my track, and then it's gonna be a hit.
There you go. There you go. Never rule it out.
Yeah. But yeah, man, that's country music actually inspired me to write because I really love how they tell stories, and they're very emotive as well. That's what really struck me with country music, and I was like, wow, I want to be able to do this. And it's funny because over time I started getting into contemporary R&B music and then pop and like just listening to a whole span of different things. But I'm really grateful that I listened to like country music first, even like as a songwriter and even as an artist, because it really gave me that perspective of being able to create meaningful music, melodically, harmonically, lyrically, but also having a pop appeal. That's really like, especially now, that's the approach I want to have. Like if I was to define what I want to do, like in terms of my artists, like the artists right now, like I'm using them as references, I would say, say like you take MJ, James Brown, Prince in terms of being like a multi-instrumentalist and producer and all that stuff. Bruno Mars and Tori Kelly and Ed Sheeran. That's kind of like
that's a big pot.
Yeah, it's a big pot.
He's not done.
And Stevie Wonder. And Stevie Wonder.
And Stevie Wonder.
Yeah. So there's seven.
Can't forget.
That's insane.
Can't forget. Yeah.
Each one of those artists inspired a whole generation of artists. And you got all of them in there.
Yeah, man. That's everyone.
But yeah, man. Like that's. If I was to use them as examples, like they're kind of reference points, and I really admire their artistry, and not just their artistry. I think the fact that they developed their own authentic voice, and they had their own process and whatnot. But I think the fact that they were also voices for their generation. And generations to come, like even like the contemporary ones, like Bruno Mars, like he's just dope because like I feel like he's legit, like
it's amazing.
Not just he's just legit amazing. Like he's inspired. Like I feel like it's
not many artists have managed to recreate themselves like he's done and be bigger than they were. Like still, like he was already a big artist, and then he completely like took his sound back to his roots and he became bigger. Like that never happens. Normally when artists do that, they sort of break away from more of a, let's face it, more of a mainstream sound and go towards something a bit more individual. Normally they lose a bit of popularity, but he blew up because it's like people were dying for a new sound and they didn't even know it.
Definitely. And that's the thing. And it helps as well because like he actually started off as a songwriter and a producer before he became an artist. And that's why I'm also drawn to being a producer as well. And like, that's not the only reason, but like for me, being a part of the creative process, like in all avenues, if I can, is important. And that's what I really admire about Bruno, because like, I like when was it 24K Magic when it hit, and was it 4 years ago, 2016?
Let me do a quick Google.
Do them Googles.
It was 2016. Yep, November 2016.
Yeah, like it's interesting because I watched his interviews and he said like, oh, nobody's doing albums anymore. He's like, I want to do something different. Everyone's releasing singles, and he was saying that oh, people were challenging him on that at the time, like, you know, maybe people on his label or whatever. But he's like, no, I want to like do something. And like, obviously he worked really hard to make it work. And it's just amazing because like when he came out with that, like that was kind of the tipping point for me. Like, because it's like, man, if this guy can be at that level and be that creative and push, like, and push to be, and push to be in the position that he's in, like as a musician, like why can't I do that? Like, you know what I mean? And it's just, I just think it's awesome. Like even going back to what I was saying, all these artists have inspired generations. That's what I want my music to really do. Like I want to have this balance of being energetic and uplifting, etc., but also telling a story and inspiring other people and, you know, making people think about certain things in different perspectives as well. I think like why I really admire those artists, those 7 artists, is like basically because like they didn't inspire a generation of people because they just made one-hit wonders. You know, they inspired a generation of people because
legacy. They all of them have a legacy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how I like to think of my music. It's like I tie in legacy with like purpose. Like, what am I going to leave behind? You know, like Michael Jackson is probably he's the biggest entertainer, and that was and probably ever will be, you know? And like, if I ended up passing that, like that'd be great. But like, I'm not too concerned about that. I'm just, for me, my thing is more about like, how can I leave, you know, my mark on this world? How can I make a positive difference in the world and leave it better than it is? Because there's always going to be problems, whether it's making people enjoy themselves through dancing or inspiring them through storytelling, etc. Like that's what I want to do. And I believe like my music, you know, if it can have a broad appeal to my generation, people before me and after me, then, you know, I guess that's kind of a bit of a real world metric that, you know, I'm heading in the right direction with that goal.
Amazing. Well, what about, let's start to wrap this up. So we just got one final question for you, because we've been asking pretty much every artist who's come on here. The last question is to do with advice. And previously we'd been looking at, you know, the situation with isolation and situation with isolation. Maybe I should write some music. And we were asking artists to give some advice about what sort of things that they could either, you know, habits they could pick up for this time, or maybe just, you know, little exercises and things that they could practice to improve themselves, keep themselves busy. But it's sort of changing now with the isolation starting to lift off. So maybe more of a general question, and this might be even more difficult, but what sort of practices would you recommend for an artist, you know, trying to improve their craft, trying to, let's take a musician, because you're a musician. What sort of practices would you recommend an artist to pick up if they really want to maximize their output?
Great question.
Yeah, that's good. I would say work to a schedule. When I say that, I don't say that sparingly. Like I literally mean that, because there's a good saying I heard from this person. I don't know. He's like a blogger. He does a lot of creative stuff. I forgot his name, but he said something, and the quote always stuck with me. He said, "Amateurs only create when they're inspired, but professionals create according to a schedule." And that is interesting for me because, like, I started adopting the habit of writing frequently. I tried doing this writing. I did an experiment a couple of years ago, try writing a song a day for 3 months. And
wow.
And it was actually really cool. It was quite successful. I had around 60 drafts by the end of it, which was awesome.
Wow.
And so I started to apply that throughout, like, since that point on. Like, it's been on and off, not always super regular, but in terms of frequency, just according to a schedule, like, okay, if I set a certain time, even if I wake up at, like, not the time I wanted to wake up, as long as I can get some time, for the most part, like 95% of the time, work to schedule and kind of have a creative habit, set that creative habit or that creative routine. And that I found that the more that I did that, even when I had, when I had writer's block or when things just weren't happening, I found that it also helped me. It also helped me to sort of reframe my perspective and my thinking about creating, not just when I'm inspired, because anyone can do that. Then the reality is, like, that's a variable in itself. Like, inspiration can just hit you at any time. And whereas I find if I do certain things in a routine, it could set me up for, like, creating more frequently. But I would say, like, it's not always going to be like, oh, you're going to write, the best song in the world, like, every time type of thing. But I've just found, like, myself gaining steady progress the more I practice. And I would say to artists who want to practice improving their craft, whether it's songwriting or whatever, and, like, I'm, speaking to myself about this as well, is that frequency is important. Scheduling a time is important as well. And a fundamental principle of that, and which I always aim to apply for myself, don't always get it 100%, is discipline, is having the self-discipline to do that. And, that's what makes these music pioneers who they are. I'm not saying that, like, everyone has to be a pioneer or anything, but, like, if you want to do great things, it starts with, understanding how you can be disciplined, mentally and creatively and all those other aspects as well.
Right.
Nice. Well, guys, you heard it here first. Consistent application equals consistent output. How good is that? How good is that, guys?
Yeah.
So, before we wrap it up, Wartabar, do you want to just give a quick shout out to your single again? Let everyone know where they can find it. Anything you want to shout out? You can shout out your socials if you want. Where can people find you?
Yeah, sure. So you guys can find me on Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I just got TikTok.
There you go. TikTok's come up again.
Yeah. TikTok. YouTube, you can find me on YouTube. It's just Wartabar at Wartabar.
Everywhere.
If you have trouble finding me, shoot me a message on Facebook, whatever, and I'll link you to it. But
unless they can't find you,
unless they can't find me, I'm a ghost.
Give them a Google search. You'll find all the results. That's Wartabar. You can find the name in our title for today's episode. If you're struggling to spell it, it's a bit of a mouthful, but it is there
for sure. So my song that released June 12th. It's called This Love. You can find it on Spotify, on iTunes, Tidal, and every other platform that I can or cannot think of right now.
Nice. Awesome. David, you got anything else?
Nah, man. Or, like, do you have any, like, sneak peek, exclusive TAN information that you want to give right now for, like, future projects what's coming up?
Or are we keeping it low key?
I will say one thing. There's an EP coming.
There's an EP. 10 exclusive, guys. You heard it here first.
That's all I'm going to say, man. That's all I'm saying. It's on download on the DL.
All right. Thanks once again, Wartabar. Thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for telling us about the single, your practices. You've been an amazing guest today. David, have we been amazing hosts?
I think we did a decent job today, man. We can give a pat on the back. We did
our best, you know.
Yeah. We should give you guys a round of applause. All right, you guys doing well.
Thanks, guys. Thanks. All right. Well, yep, that's a wrap. Thank you for coming in again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely, man. Thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it. Really appreciate you giving up your time. We'll see you next week with another episode of 10 Artistry. We got a very interesting guest coming on. Our first multi-member artist. Okay, David, save me from this one.
Our first band coming up next week.
That's what they're called, you know?
Yes.
More than one member.
Yes.
We're very excited for that. So, guys, stay tuned. And as always, peace.
Peace.
Peace.